What's up, everybody? Welcome to Don't Give Up with Jacob. Today, I have a special guest joining me on my show. Not only that, but she also has her own app which helps neurodiverse people balance money. So it is my pleasure to welcome to my show Natasha Barber.
Hey, what an intro. I feel like I'm about to walk onto a stage. This is amazing. Thank you so much, Jacob, for having me.
No problem. Welcome to my show. I'm so glad that you were able to make it so I could ask you lots of questions. There's a
I'm ready.
lot I want to ask you.
I'm ready.
All right. So, first off, I've heard that you had your own app which helps neurodiverse people budget their money.
Yeah. I started, but well, we're working on it. We're building this app. It's quite the feat. But I have been developing this since May of last year. I am neurodivergent myself. I have ADHD, a visual processing disorder, dyslexia, dyscalculia, and complex PTSD. Sometimes I have to like sit there and remember, oh, what do I have? And so, navigating money and finances is tough. And also, just people with ADHD tend to have higher job turnover and things like that. For me, I happen to be in a really unique field that means that I can't get unemployment. So there were these long gaps where I didn't have unemployment, and it really took a huge toll on my finances. And so I worked for churches, and the last church I was in was closing, and I thought, I'm just going to go 100% into Pistachio Pay. It's the first trauma-informed financial wellness app with automation for neurodivergent users. And we're designing so that this will work with people's brains instead of against them.
All right, sounds interesting. So I'm gonna ask you what inspired you to start this app and how is it supposed to help neurodiverse people with their money?
Yeah, I heard a story one time that a comedian told. This is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, because I'd been thinking about it for years. I'm like, I wish something would just automate my finances and I could just spend my money. And so I heard this story of this guy who had a very bad habit. I don't want to get into it, but he had a bad habit, and he told his manager, he's a celebrity, that he wanted to buy a Rolex watch, and he ended up trading in that Rolex watch for cash so he could enjoy his bad habit. And I thought to myself, wealth manager, how come I can't have one of those? Why can't I have a wealth manager? And so I started looking into it, like, well, how can I find someone that can manage my finances so I could just spend my money and whatever? And found out that I couldn't afford one. So I started to think about that, and I started to do some research. Like, am I the only one who's struggling with these issues? And I found out that there's, with ADHD alone, right? I mean, there's just so many more other neurodivergencies, but with ADHD alone, there's 300 million people worldwide, and 47% of them, I believe, are dissatisfied with their budgeting apps and tools. So that's 172 million people who are struggling. And I find that to be problematic. So I started to architect around it. I started to realize, I'm not the only one. And I talked to my friend Kamiko, who I knew had been in tech. And she was like, startups are hard. And so I just started talking about it online. And the next thing you know, it became more and more real. And now she's on board as my co-founder. And we're moving forward. We're so excited. And we just want to bring something to the market that no one's ever seen before, something that is a true companion. So we don't see money as math, we see it as emotional, and we want to help people enjoy their money.
All right, sounds very interesting. In fact, I'm in high school
Yeah.
and I'm actually learning all about money. Like,
Mhm.
I'm learning how to budget, I'm learning revenues, I'm learning expenses, I'm learning about profits and
Wow.
loss, and this will help me when I eventually graduate high school and college, and then I'm gonna have to get stuff like a car
Mhm.
and groceries and a water bill, an electric bill, and learning about all this money business is definitely
Yeah.
gonna help me in the future world.
Yeah. It can be a bit overwhelming, can it, Jacob? And that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff to think about, isn't it? Like all those things to pay. It just gets so overwhelming. And so what we're doing is we're developing something that takes care of all that part. and we just get to spend our money. We're going to have an allowance card. And so we're working on a version for everyone, but we're also working on one specifically. We're thinking about doing a pistachio junior version so that parents can, work with their kids on their allowances. And just what you said, teaching kids how to be mindful of their money. So we're not expecting people to fit into a box and say, you have to do it. You have to do budgeting this way, the way neurotypicals do. We're saying, you don't have to do that part. We'll take care of that. But when it comes to your daily spending money, we want you to be able to enjoy it. And you'll start learning patterns about yourself. And we're going to highlight those in a non-shameful, trauma-informed way. So with what you're saying, I think it sounds really great. And it is important that people your age learn financial literacy, but sometimes for some of us, it's even more difficult than that. We just need a solution.
Yeah, I'm very glad to hear that. And speaking of which, I'm now going to ask you how this will not only help young adults in high school or college, but also younger children, like maybe those in elementary school and middle school as well.
Wow. I haven't really thought about that yet, Jacob. You got my brain going here. I'm not really sure, but we are thinking about some really cool elements like gamification. I'm not gonna, I can't say too much, but we do have some things where we're going to be gamifying some elements. And you just gave me some really good ideas. Maybe we'll start developing that a little bit more under the Pistachio Junior part, but we've got to get Pistachio Pay off the ground first.
Yeah, and that's why it's good to focus on one thing at a time. So that way you're not freaking out and worrying about stuff. You're not in a rush.